Sometimes good things that we do ends up killing our plants. This is Darryl with Louisiana Simple Living. I'm going to give you 6 practices or good intentions, things that we do out in the garden that ends up killing our plants. Alright, number 1 is watering practices. Now there's no big surprise that we have to water our plants for them to survive. There are some methods or practices in the way that we water that are more beneficial to your plants, and there's some that will actually go about damaging or killing them. So the first topic is too much or too little. So in your raised beds, those plants tend to grow faster. They use up the water and nutrients faster. Plus the raised bed tends to, the water will drain through, then since it's up above the ground, it tends to evaporate more. And from those reasons, we got to make sure that we're watering them at the appropriate level. And so a solution, a good rule of thumb is to go ahead and get your finger, jab it in the soil 1 inch deep, give or take. If the tip of your finger, if it's moist there, then your raised bed's got plenty of water. And another good rule of thumb is don't just spray the top. You got to really soak it, get that water going into the bed. Again, you're checking for 1 inch, but those roots are down lower. If we don't water deeply, the roots tend to be more shallow, which is not a good root system as we're looking for. All right, another item under number 1 watering is the timing of when you're doing your watering. All right, so that's really important. So the recommended time to water your garden is first thing in the morning. Your plants are ready to receive the water. You go ahead and water it. It has time to absorb it into the roots, up into the plant, before it gets to the top of the day where you got sun really beaming down on it. And that's just the optimum way to do it. In the summer, in the raised beds, you may have to water twice a day. If you do water twice a day, especially in your spring summer garden where you got tomatoes, things of that nature, you don't want to do it too late. Don't do it right when it's dusk, right when it's getting dark, because you'll pool up water on those leaves, and that allows any waterborne disease and pests or anything of that nature, that it gives them a better chance to get established throughout the night. So solution, water in the morning. Now I don't get out and water every day because I have an automated watering system. I did a video on that the other day, just kind of showing you what I got set up here. But I don't have to worry about coming out in the morning and watering. Sometimes I come home from work, I'll come and check it, and it may be dry, then I'll go ahead and water it. But then again, that's the solution. Either get an automated watering system to come out and water for you, or get up in the morning, come on out, inspect all your plants, and give it a good water. And one other item in your watering practice is the method of your watering. I did mention my automated watering system, so I even use a hose sometimes myself and water. If I'm doing my supplemental watering for the day, I'll use a hose. I also have an automated watering system, so I got drip hoses that are at the garden level, the soil level, or below, covered up with mulch, and that's the best way to apply it. So the problem with using the hose spraying down on the soil, it tends to knock around or disturb the soil-borne fungus and things of that nature, different kinds of bacteria, and it makes it bounce. It knocks it up onto the leaves or onto the stem, and that allows that soil-borne disease to get established now in your plant. All right, number 2 practices that are good if we do them right and apply them right. That's number 2 is fertilizer, or your fertilizing practice. Now I know a lot of gardeners, they use synthetic fertilizers. I did in the past. I understand it's cheap, it's easy to do. I have since switched to doing nothing more organic. But what you got with your fertilizers, they're typically very strong. Your NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So you may have a bag of fertilizer you like to go throw out on your lawn, some 13-13-13 or 20-20-20, whatever. Man, that's some strong fertilizer. In the past, again, when I didn't know any better, I'd take that fertilizer and kind of sprinkle it out in my garden, and man, it made everything grow. But also, where the fertilizer kind of sat up or hit on the leaves or on the stems, it really burned the plant. And that fertilizer does provide nutrients, but it releases ammonia, nitrogen, different kinds of nitrates into the soil. Now, those substances will affect your plants in a negative way, especially if you have buildup over time of those really, really strong fertilizers. And the solution, there's the easy one. Use organic fertilizers. There's a number of products you can get that may have fish and seaweed or kelp. You may have worm castings, that's another great one. But nevertheless, those organic products are not going to leach out and cause the runoff issues from nitrites and those kind of things that you would find in a synthetic fertilizer. And so that's the solution, is use a lower NPK organic fertilizer. I do have an understanding fertilizer video down, I'll link below. Check that out because it'll help you out on that too. All right, and practice number 3, that's a good thing, but you may be killing your plants in the long term, and that's tilling the soil. So when I was a new gardener, now I remember getting my tiller, going out there and just, I mean, hitting the ground hard, just shaking you to death to make my conventional rows, you know, and amend my garden. But I always had problems with that soil. Number one, I had bad soil here where I had some rows. Clay is not very far down, within inches of the grass. But every year I had to go in, because there was so much clay content, I had to go in there and till it every year. So in the process, you notice you're killing all your earthworms. Your earthworms are your original farmer, if you think about it that way. So they've been farming the soil, so they go tunnel through the soil, right? They leave their castings behind, and they also secrete some stuff on the walls that keeps those walls open. So through those tunnels in the ground is how water and oxygen, air gets down into the soil to the root systems for them to be able to absorb them and have good plants growing up. And so it's obvious, but these tunnels, as well as the earthworms, are destroyed when you go out there and when you till, right? And so you don't have any earthworms working for you from that point through the next season. Now some will move in, right? Some will move in, but then you're going to kill them when you get ready to start the new season. I was doing that and I was thinking, man, this seems off. I don't know why I'm doing it. But nevertheless, there's a better way. The solution is use raised beds. You don't stick a tiller inside of your raised bed. I double dug underneath where I was going to put the bed to start with. I haven't touched the soil other than amending the top layer with compost and azomite, rock dust, things of that nature. I amend the soil each season, or for sure every year. Earthworms are good for you. They're good for your garden. Keep them alive, and your garden will be more successful. And if you like what we're talking about here today, do me a favor, subscribe, like that video. Let's go on. All right, we're on big number 4. So it's location, location, location. I mentioned a couple of videos back about a guy who had a saying that, you know, gardening is local. And that's absolutely rock solid, straight on. So the idea of where you put your plants, where you put your raised bed and your plants, has a very direct effect on how well your plants will survive or whether they're going to die. So it'd be cool, like, you know, I could see somebody have a big old oak tree, and from an aesthetic reason, I'm going to go put my garden up underneath there. Man, it's going to look beautiful. But I guarantee if he does that and he doesn't have the right plants, it's not going to be successful. And obviously the sun is essential for growth of your plants, right? For them to survive. If you don't have enough sunlight, they're more susceptible to disease and the pest. So not only from a nutrient standpoint, they're not going to grow well, but then you'll have disease and pests come in and attack those before they'll attack some of your more healthier plants that are getting enough sun for that particular species. If you look on a package for a plant, you know, it doesn't need full sun, doesn't need partial sun, doesn't need shade. So you got those 3 kind of windows that you can look at and to help you decide what kind of plant you can plant out in your garden based on the amount of sun that you have throughout the day. So you got to look at from when from when it comes up in the morning to when it sets, and kind of figure out approximately the hours that's going to have sunlight, and that'll help you understand better about whether your plants will be successful or not. And again, the solution is just check your package, check the requirements, check the internet, figure out how much sun each of these plants is supposed to have, plant it in a place. Hopefully you have a place that's open enough that you're able to plant your plants and get enough sunlight. But just again, understand the requirements and try to meet those requirements. That'll make your plant as healthy as absolutely can be. And still around location, number 4 is drainage. So a raised bed does a good job of draining the rain out, draining the water out. Be cognizant of where you're locating your raised bed. If it's in a place where water is going to pool up or sit, if it's a low spot in your backyard or in your garden or on your grass, wherever it may be, don't put it in a spot that's a low spot, because once water kind of saturates around the raised bed, there ain't nowhere for that water to go if it's a low spot, if it don't drain away. So just something else to think about from a location standpoint. And the solution, just make sure where you plant your plants in your raised beds that it is not a low spot that will not allow the water to release out and drain away. All right, big old number 5 is pesticides. All right, so look, we all got the bugs, the pests come in. Squash vine borer, that's one that I've been dealing with and have been for a number of years. You get aphids here or there, squash bugs. You get all kind of pests that are going to attack your garden. Pretty soon we're going to start seeing some cabbage worms, so be on the lookout for them as well. Make sure you got some BT. But your pesticides, so let's say we go out and we take a look at a plant and there's aphids all over it. And I have done this in the past, right? My first instinct, you go buy a container of 7 dust and you go out there and man, you just sprinkle it all over, right? You sprinkle that 7 dust, man, it's going to kill them all. And you know what? There's a couple other pests I saw on another plant, and there's probably going to be some coming up. So I'm going to proactively go and just sprinkle 7 dust all over. Or you can get it as a spray too, or any of these other kind of pesticides. You go over and spray it around, be proactive, put it on every single plant you got. And lo and behold, here comes a bee. He gets on that plant, he gets a little bit of that pesticide on him, he's dead. We can't have vegetables if we can't get our flowers pollinated. So if we just, carte blanche, just go ahead and 7-bomb the whole garden, man, we're going to knock out all those bad pests, but unfortunately we're also kill our pollinators, and that's not a good way to go. So go organic. You need neem oil, you need BT. Neem oil is just a pretty general purpose organic product. BT is a bacteria that affects caterpillars and caterpillars only. That is the way to go. Now look, you can kill pollinators if you spray it directly on them, but the active ingredients does not really hurt them. The solution again is, instead of having pesticides all over your stuff killing pollinators, is to go organic, neem oil, BT. There's a couple other products I haven't tried, but I want to try, and it's something you ought to think about doing too. Not only does it keep your pollinators alive, but it keeps the harsh chemicals off your vegetables, and that's not something I want to bring in my house and eat. So that's how to take care of the pesticide. Another important point about having to use synthetic pesticides or organic: inspect your plants daily. It's so important you go and observe your plants and look for new bugs, new behaviors, new infestations. And the idea is you want to get to that plant, use an organic product before it is an infestation. And so that's important too. Just want to make sure you thought of that too. Now the final topic we'll talk about in number 6 is pets. I know pets has really nothing to do with your gardening and what you may be doing out in your garden, but it does have something to do with what your pets may be doing out in your garden. And so that's what I'm talking about. I got 2 dogs. At times, like, they go out in the garden, they love the garden, check everything out. At times they'll kind of, instead of walking down the paths, they'll hop over. I don't mean hop, they walk over my raised bed, put little footprints in, compress in the soil. I don't like that. Sometimes they'll step on a plant, affect that. And every now and then they leave me a special surprise on the top of one of my raised beds. So I don't like that as well. And that's okay, because I'm accepting of a little bit of that, but if it became a bigger problem, we'd have to do something. But the solution really is just to make sure as early as you can, when you bring pets into this environment, into your garden, try to watch them, watch out for that bad behavior, the things we don't want them to do, and try to correct it. The other part of that, though, is from a toxic plant standpoint. So some of these plants can be toxic to dogs and cats and even other animals. And from a toxic plant standpoint, just for an example, a tomato, it has something called solanine in it. That is toxic to both dogs and cats. And so again, you know, the solution is just train your pets to try to behave when they're out in the garden. If not, you got to do something about it. Try to affect their behavior. If you can't, you may have to put a fence up. All right, so far we covered some good stuff around what you sometimes would do you think is good when it could be actually killing your plants. If you like these great hints on gardening, man, go ahead and do me a favor. Like it, subscribe. As I always say, make memories now, make memories rather than later. And as always, I will see you on the next video.